The Podcasting Dead is available on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, and SoundCloud. Make sure to subscribe for more podcasts. And while you're at it, drop us a like. If you want to help support the channel and have access to extra content, secret contest, and more, make sure to search for us on Patreon. Patreon.com/thepodcastingdead.
All right, it's time for a podcast that you didn't even know we were going to throw at you. I'm Justin.
I'm JP.
And we're the Podcasting Dead. If you're just finding us, consider hitting that subscribe button. We podcast about all kinds of things, from entertainment to the raunchy sexcapades JP finds himself in, to conspiracies and paranormal. We basically podcast about a little bit of everything, and sometimes those all tie in together. It's a weird world that we live in.
Yeah, I like talking about Sasquatch.
Sasquatch, there you go. We do talk about Sasquatch from time to time. And also don't forget to check our Patreon, where you can get extra content, behind the scenes, secret contests, and more. Now let's move on to something that I don't know that we've really discussed on this channel before, but I feel like we're going to be discussing it a lot more because it's one of my favorite things ever, talking about the Resident Evil franchise. And when I say it's one of my favorite things ever, I mean basically like everything except for 6 and 5 was okay. But I love the Resident Evil franchise. For me, being that this podcast started as a Walking Dead conversation podcast, it holds a special place in my heart because Resident Evil is what got me into the zombie genre. Because at my age, you know, the George A. Romero, Dawn of the Dead, all of that, I mean, it was around, and I eventually did get into it, but I was a kid. You know, I mean, like when that stuff came out, the first one, I wasn't even on this earth. So, you know, Resident Evil's what really got me into the whole zombie genre. And then it spread, of course, to George A. Romero and The Walking Dead. Well, I did do a stream of the Resident Evil 2 remake when it first came out. I can't promise that's entertaining. That's somewhere on our YouTube channel, but I will definitely be doing a live stream alongside JP here when Resident Evil 3's remake comes out. And JP, that's where you kind of tie in, because you didn't play the Resident Evils, but you spent some time watching like your cousin play Resident Evil 3 Nemesis. So when you saw the remake, you were actually pretty intrigued.
It's got my curiosity tickled a little bit.
You got your curiosity. I'm sure.
A little bit. So we'll see. We'll see how it do. You know, it's Resident Evil. I always thought it was pretty cool. The movies left a little bit to be desired.
They sucked ass, and that's kind of why we're here now, because they might be coming to a screen near you, but actually and hopefully done with actual respect to the source material.
I hope they do it right this time, man.
So here's what we've got. I found this article on blooddisgusting.com. What a website title there. I'm digging it. So, you know, I don't know if you, the listener, have heard this, but there is going to be a Netflix original Resident Evil series. And JP, I think, is the one that informed me about this, gosh, probably a year ago, right? I mean,
I've heard something about it.
You heard about this around the time the Resident Evil 2 remake came out, which was January of last year. So, yeah, JP was the one that told me about this, and, of course, I kind of forgot about it because...
Yeah, man, I hadn't heard anything about it in a long time.
Yeah, but there's another fan site. It's called Redanian Intelligence. I'm sure I said that wrong, but that's a fan site, and what's cool about this is they're kind of like the Spoiling Dead. See, the thing about the Spoiling Dead for the Walking Dead universe is that's a group of fans that ultimately... uncover like all the spoilers ahead of time, and it's insane how specific they can be because they even are sometimes able to obtain scripts, and that's kind of what I'm reading. That's what this site is for like shows and stuff, because they worked and uncovered information for the Witcher Netflix series, which I still haven't gotten to. Plan to here. It's great. And the thing is that a lot of the information they got on that was correct. So they do have some credit to their name. But so this hasn't been confirmed, but they have gotten some information on the Resident Evil series. They say that production is supposed to start in June of this year, and the show is going to be 8 episodes, each being about 60 minutes in length. Now, according to this, that before the actual June film start date, the series on-location prep work is going to begin around April, with a large part of it being based in South Africa.
Does it say where it's going to be streaming?
Netflix.
Okay.
Yeah,
nice,
Netflix. Now, of course, none of this has been confirmed by Netflix or Constantine Film. However, we've got this Resident Evil 3 remake that I'm just ridiculously excited for. And with The Witcher's Netflix success, it's not that big of a stretch of an imagination if this was like legit. So we're looking at a reported 8 episodes, an hour each, giving me 8 hours of Resident Evil. Now, the details I'm waiting for are, what is it based on? Are we going to be following some characters from the show? Is it going to be kind of like one of those series where we're following people people from the game? Is it going to be one of those series where we're seeing it from another perspective, where characters may be referenced, but we're following characters that were maybe like, if you're not familiar with Resident Evil, let me just give you a tiny little gist, because, man, if you open that, going down that rabbit hole would take all day. But basically, bioengineered viruses made by the evil Umbrella Corporation get turned loose in Raccoon City, which is an American city. And it basically just a zombie outbreak happens. And the first game takes place in the Spencer Mansion, which follows, you've got Wesker, Barry, Rebecca, and Jill being kind of the main characters, and you follow their journey, and they actually uncover that mansion is, and I guess this is spoilers for the games, but dude, it came out in 1996. I mean, your chance for spoiler-free talks of Resident Evil's video game are over. They discover that the mansion is actually just kind of stands in place under, it's a research facility for Umbrella, the evil pharmaceutical company making bioweapons to sell to the highest bidder. And this creates zombies, all kinds of crazy monsters. See, Walking Dead fans, this goes beyond zombies. There are zombies, and they're a huge part of the franchise. But past that, you've got things called lickers, which are just these freaky-looking humanoid things with no skin. You can see their brains. They have tongues that are extremely long they can stab you with, and claws the size of like my forearms on each one of the. And then you've got what they call hunters. You've got Crimson Heads were in the remake. Now, well, here's what's interesting, JP. You might find this interesting, because I know JP's kind of glazing over because he's like, I don't play or know any of this. JP's, for those new to the channel, JP is not that big into video games. He loves retro gaming. Yeah, Super Nintendo, NES, stuff like that. But new gaming's just not something he's into. However, he's going to attempt to play the Resident Evil 2 remake.
I'm going to give it a try, man. We'll give it a try. We got a PS4 at the house, so we'll give it a try.
Well, check this out. So with Resident Evil, in the original, this didn't happen, but they did a remake of Resident Evil, which is strange because the Resident Evil 2 remake, Resident Evil 2 originally came out in 1998. Now, the remake didn't come out until 2019. So, I mean, that's a good, 21 years? Am I right? Is my math right? Yeah. 98, 2008 was 10. Yeah, 21 years. Now, Resident Evil's remake, which was really well done, actually I think that came out like 2002. So 96, you're talking just a few years down the road, they had remade it. But now the remake introduced a whole new terrifying aspect to the zombies. So basically the way it works is when you kill a zombie, you have to light it on fire and burn it. If you don't, later on in the game, that zombie that you killed will come back as what's called a Crimson Head. Mm-hmm. And they are zombies that have these long claws. They've mutated, and they are extremely fast. Like, they haul ass after you. Whereas the zombies, are a very minimal threat. They're slow. If you can keep them from grouping in, large numbers, you can take them out pretty easily. Crimson Heads, on the other hand, oh, man, I'll never forget the first time I got chased by a Crimson Head. Considering myself at the time a Resident Evil expert, I've played the original, front to back, and this is just a graphics overhaul, yada, yada. Oh, my God. So Resident Evil is going to up the freak factor. At least I hope they do. That the movies tried way too hard to go for the action factor. Paul W.S. Anderson just did not make good Resident Evil films. So that's just the way it is. I think most agree. Now, they are a guilty pleasure of mine. I've seen all of them in theaters, and I've watched them all a few times since. But it's only because it's the closest thing I've ever had to a Resident Evil on-screen adaptation. But he went for the Matrix-y, kind of flashy, out-there action that was popular, when he first started. Because, The Matrix and the first Resident Evil movie, I don't think were that far apart. So it's kind of like that just was kind of the thing then, I guess. But it just continued. And I like Mila Jovovich, however you say her last name, which is his wife. Created a original character for her, and basically the whole series was just to glorify his wife. But I do like her, just didn't like the movies. I'm hoping, because see what Resident Evil 2 did, and in the game franchise, trying to speak broad here for those that maybe haven't played the games or whatnot. Resident Evil 1 through 3 were all survival horror. And I'm talking main stories. There are a lot of side games and stuff. 1 through 3 were all survival horror. Now, some argue that 3 definitely, took a step towards action. And while that might be the case, there still were, you were terrified to go around a corner, even though it was an action based. If Nemesis was, you never knew when Nemesis was going to bust through that wall, and it was terrifying. So there were still scary elements in it. And when it got to 4, that's when they really kind of got it. Still had some, but they kind of really jumped away and went to action. However, 4 was really well done. 5 was a terrible Resident Evil game, but a great action game. And 6 was just shitty all around, other than some of the co-op was fun, but just not really a good game. But then Resident Evil 7 came along. Resident Evil 7 took the series back to this survival horror. It brought the fear back into it, because for the last few games, you weren't scared of anything you were fighting. You were just running and gunning. This made you scared to go around a corner. This made you scared to progress through the game, because you'd be walking, you'd see a long hallway in front of you, and the whole time you're thinking, oh my God, someone's going to bust through the wall. I know someone's going to bust. That's what we all wanted. And Resident Evil 2's remake was just expertly done. It combined action with survival horror. And I mean, it made you scared to walk down hallways, and just made you. So I'm hoping that they'll take a note from the success of the Resident Evil 2 remake and take the movies back in that direction. I know I kind of went way off the rails there, but my point is, this series has had the game series, similar to how, it went the way of action, which is the way the movies went. So I'm hoping the movies will take a note from the game. And if they do it right, Walking Dead fans, you might really enjoy this show, because it might be absolutely terrifying.
Yeah, Netflix definitely has a good track record for the most part. I don't know what studio was putting this thing. Well,
Constantine Films or something like that. Yeah,
I'm not familiar with their
probably one of those places. If I read through their work, we'd be like, oh, I didn't know.
Probably so.
Yeah,
you're probably right.
You don't know them by name,
right?
But we'll definitely be podcasting on that. I don't think it's slated to. I don't even know. Let me look up here before we go and see if they have a release date. I don't know that they've given us one. I think it was 2021. But when it does come out here on the channel, we will be covering it episode by episode. By God, if JP tries to get out of watching it, I will come to his house and tie him to the chair, and Alex from A Clockwork Orange, just force his eyes open, stand there giving him eye drops in his eyes so they don't dry out as he watches the Resident Evil Netflix show.
Feed me some Dunkaroos as we watch it.
I do love Dunkaroos. Do you like Dunkaroos?
What is something like that they're getting ready to bring back? I don't know. Anyway, but no, I'll watch it. Yeah. Yeah,
I'm trying to see. And apparently this is, from what I'm reading, let's see. From what I'm reading, this isn't just a limited series. Let's see. Okay, so from Inverse.com, they have an article that's titled "Everything We Know About Netflix's Rumored Resident Evil Gore Fest." Oh, man. The deadline, let's see. Blah, 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 blah. An adaptation from the zombie horror Resident Evil series. No official announcements have been made, and a lot of details are still unconfirmed. Netflix has yet to officially announce that the series is happening, so that's interesting. I was hoping, but that they had. But yeah, shooting's supposed to start in June, wrap up by October. An early 2021 release. So, and apparently this is just season 1. So, I mean, I'm sure it'll be one of those they'll have to gauge how it goes. But with the hype around the game and the hype around the remake of the third one, unless the third one comes out and just puts a terribly sour taste in everyone's mouth, which, judging by how good the second one was, I'm not thinking that's going to happen. Hopefully the hype train, I mean, that Resident Evil 2's remake was so good. And I mean, it's not without its flaws, definitely. But I love it so much that, I got it January of 2019. And I mean, I'm still playing it every other weekend. Yeah. I've taken breaks and played like the Spider-Man game finally, and played Days Gone and Red Dead Redemption and other games, but I always come back to Resident Evil 2. It's always the game if I'm sitting around the house with nothing to do. I put it in and I'll start a new campaign because it's just that enjoyable. In fact, the last 3 weekends, I've beaten it at least once every weekend.
That's your happy place. There's nothing wrong with that.
And I'm hoping the series will take notes from that. I'm hoping they'll study these games and find what makes them special and try to figure out a way to convert that to our home screens and in a way that translates well.
Yeah.
Because it has the potential to scare the bejesus out of you. It's so good. It's so
intense
good.
Games, man, from what I saw.
They are, man. And I'm thinking Nemesis is definitely, they say it scared me at first because getting into the games a little bit, they said, that they had an interview. Because what's cool to note is if you're worried that, oh man, well, Resident Evil 2's remake just came out January of last year and they've already, they announced the third one before the year mark it even hit. Don't worry. It's not like they rushed on this. They were working on 3. They had a whole separate studio or group of people working on 3 alongside 2. Mm-hmm. And what's so great is if you play the games, and I know if you're not a gamer, you're rolling your eyes right now, like, hey, I want to hear about the show. But what's cool about the games is the fact that, they kind of happen at the same time in a sense. Resident Evil 3 is both a prequel and somewhat of a sequel to Resident Evil 2.
Kind of like Better Call Saul.
In a way, absolutely. So it's like part of the game takes place before Leon and Claire get to town, and then the rest of it takes place after they leave. So they were working on this. So what's so cool is if they do it right, there are things like when you play 2, you go through the police station, and JP, you'll see there's walls that are busted through, just big holes in these walls. And you're like, you wonder what could have done that. We're hoping, playing Resident Evil 3, there was close coordination between the 2 groups of people making these games that you'll see why that hole was in the locker room. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like there will be some really cool. So I'm just hoping they'll take a note from all of this and they'll create a great show.
If you woke up in Raccoon City, what would you do?
If I woke up in, well, number one, I'd be wondering why I was waking up in Raccoon City. Number 2, how did this fictional city become reality? But no, I mean, if I woke up in Raccoon City, man, I don't want to spoil it because some people might be just getting into the franchise, so I don't want to spoil it too bad. But aside from the zombies, the monsters, and other stuff, I'm getting the F out of Raccoon City for other reasons. I would try to find some kind of weapon, stay away from crowded streets, and maybe make my way out of the city.
I'd hide in a freight container or something. I don't know.
I'm so proud of you. You don't play the games, but you just made a reference. Do you know which reference I'm talking about? Do you know? Did you mean to do that?
I just find a very strong structure and barricade myself.
See, JP might not know what he just did, but people who have played Resident Evil 3 Nemesis know why I got excited right there because you had Dario. I can't remember exactly how you say his name. There was this guy at the beginning of the game with Jill Valentine that gets trapped in like this warehouse with her. So she finally decides help's not coming. They need to make their way out of the city. And this guy spazzes out and is like, what are you talking about? I'm not leaving this place. I'd rather, die in here than be eaten by one of those freaks. And he locks himself in like a shipping container.
What is he doing there?
I don't know.
Has he got supplies?
If you go back, you'll find out what happened to him. But let's just say it doesn't end very well for him.
Does he have like a...
No, he just gets emotional and locks himself.
Or?
I guess he just poops in the corner.
Oh.
Right? You got to have a poop bucket, a little water to dilute it a little bit.
Come on, Dario.
But yeah, so I don't know if you meant to, because I know you said you watched your cousin play it, but I know that you're also just not really as into that stuff. So I imagine you watched him play it, but you probably were zoning out half the time. So I don't know if you meant to make that reference or not, but kudos either way. That's a good way to bring it kind of full circle. But so yeah, we'll keep you updated when we learn stuff. Again, this podcast, we're a podcast. We discuss things. So when we find out stuff, we will definitely be having some conversations about details as they leak. And I really, thinking about, I hadn't even considered the fact that Netflix hadn't even confirmed this show yet. I need them to go ahead and do that because nothing's going to make me sadder than to hear all this hype about one of my favorite franchises of all time, only to have it not happen.
You never know, man. But I think it'll come together.
Cool fact before we go. Yeah. Did you know, as bad as the actual Resident Evil movies were, George Romero actually wrote a script for the first one.
Really?
And it was rejected by the studio, and they went with Paul W.S. Anderson, who somehow convinced them that...
Wow.
Well, then again, now that I think about it, Paul W.S. Anderson probably came and was like, yeah, that one's well thought out, but my wife's Mila Jovovich, and I'll have her half naked kicking ass and showing some skin for as many movies as you want. And they were like, we like you, Paul.
Yeah, well, like you said, they probably wanted some Matrix-esque blockbuster, and that probably won't what George A. Romero was about.
No. He did write a commercial for it, though.
Oh, really?
He did write a commercial for a promo like for Resident Evil 2 that actually was filmed, and it was a very bizarre commercial because Leon looked like he was like 12. But anyways, so if you are a fan of Resident Evil, let us know anything that you may know, something that we missed or something we should share or talk about here on the podcast. If you're not a fan of Resident Evil, but perhaps you do like The Walking Dead and you are a regular listener of our podcast and that's why you're here, consider digging up some info on the Resident Evil franchise. I mean, it is a little bit more out there, but keep in mind, if it wasn't for the Resident Evil franchise, I don't know that I would even be that into The Walking Dead. So definitely do some research. I think this show, it might be a little bit more intense than The Walking Dead is. I mean,
oh yeah,
The Walking Dead, definitely has its tense moments, but I mean, Resident Evil it's a tense. It should be, if it's done right, a really, really tense viewing experience. But nonetheless, you may find some interest in it. In the meantime, don't forget to check out our Patreon podcast. We have new Patreon casts up each week. In fact, we are hopping off of here to go record a Patreon podcast.
Exactly.
So, hopefully you'll consider checking out some of our other stuff. And if we never see you again, I'm glad we got to spend this time together.
Yeah, until next time.
Until next time, or the time that will never happen. I'm Justin.
I'm JP.
And we're the Podcasting Dead. Can you say I'm JP a little happier for me?
Huh? No, it's too early. I need some sweet tea.
I need some coffee.